Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'd like to welcome our first ever guest, a very talented designer by the name of Ryan McMaster. So, Ryan is a product designer and co founder of Grow, a platform that connects work activities and Slack so teams can give and receive feedback on their work and see how it impacts business goals and OKRs. Ryan was one of the founding designers for Chorus AI, a sales analytics startup that helps sales teams get valuable feedback on their processes and calls. I first met Ryan during our time working together at Chorus, where he led multiple projects, including new feature development, design systems, and eventually the acquisition of Chorus to Zoom Info. With all that being said, welcome, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's kind of start from the beginning. What kind of got you into wanting to become a designer? What got you interested in the technology industry? Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I've always been very entrepreneurial, and some of my first design projects were in fashion, doing print stuff, and that's really what I initially wanted to do, just like design magazines, do editorials, do like branding. And then it reached a certain point, I don't want to age myself too much, but it reached a certain point where I realized like, digital products seem pretty good and like I have much more revenue from my agency at the time coming in through websites and digital campaigns. And I kind of cut my teeth on a social intranet product and a couple other products during this interesting time around like 2009. And I just fell in love with product design. I thought, this is actually a way for designers to impact business goals, do interesting experience design, and not just merely like put lipstick on a pig, for branding and marketing, just like really actually be involved in how the product itself is made. And so I was hooked and got really deep into the Vancouver startup scene, and then started collaborating with different people through my agency.
Mhm. Awesome. And then with this agency, this is Theory, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Theory. Awesome. And then how did you end up working alongside Chorus?
Yeah, we got introduced during a period of time where I was helping get the SaaStr brand up and running and doing the first few years of the events around SaaStr. I was able to meet the co-founders of Chorus, really early days, proof of concept, just like scribbles of what the interface could look like. And I really admired the founders. I thought they were doing a great job. And we met in person in San Francisco. I hopped on the plane, and I was just like, I remember thinking, oh, this is so juicy. I really want to dive into this. So I started. This is before Figma really was popping off, and so opened up Sketch on my laptop, waiting for the plane, and knocked out like a couple versions of the first thing, sent it back to them like, hey, I normally don't do like free work, but I just got inspired. Should we make this a thing? Should we do a contract? What should we do? And so they liked the initial work. And yeah, we did. I was unable to immigrate to the States, so we just worked on a contractor relationship, and I was full-time contract for a few years, and really enjoyed it. Took a break. They needed somebody in-house, and I wasn't able to move. There was some family stuff I needed to take care of. But at a certain point, they reached back out, and I was able to pick up where I left off, help the product and design team. And at that point, initially it was just like four of us, and then six and 10. And coming back, there was 50, and we scaled that up to like 250 people by the time we were acquired. And so it was a great learning experience to go from like maybe in my early design days thinking naively, let's make this dribble worthy. And now, okay, this is a serious enterprise product. There's a lot of other considerations. And as we scaled and we're trying to make real business value, it was a chance for me to expand my horizons and get more on the like business design side and customer development, and expand my my repertoire as a designer.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's definitely been really interesting how the idea of chorus came to be, and then how little by little, with all the different design work that was done throughout the years, how the idea evolved and then actually came to life. Do you think the founders had in mind what they wanted to make possible with the product?
Yeah, it's kind of like interesting coming full circle. The very first mock-ups that we did were very um, forward thinking. In fact, some of the early stuff, because it was all proprietary AI. Now with open AI, you're like, some of the stuff isn't as big of a deal. But at the time, it was very cutting edge, and um, I'm probably going to get the figure wrong. I believe we had like 13 patents on the AI model itself. But no, like from the very beginning, the vision was very clear. One of the founders, the CEO Roy, he had been consulting and noticing similar patterns in the revenue departments. And early days, we took lots of photos of uh, sales reps, CSMs, AEs, different people in the sales world, and how they set up their workstation. Tried to replicate that and give them a full experience that would help them in real time. We were actually too advanced, I would say. We kind of overwhelmed people in the first few iterations. Um, but what's interesting is a lot of the initial work that we did and some of the really unique UI and stuff. It was like it was premature for that time, and we ended up coming back to it. So as we were um, making like bigger deals and growing our revenue, the appetite was there for it, and the innovation was ready, and we had the right team and everything. So I think their vision was correct, and it was cool to see it come to fruition by the end.
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. What would you say was the biggest challenge from chorus, especially pre-acquisition?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think we did a couple things that were interesting. We tried to go up market. That was a big shift in our strategy. So our revenue team was like insanely good. We brought in a CRO, and um, from the product development side, we were constantly in communication with the sales team. We were reviewing what was going well, what didn't demo well, what their hopes and dreams were from the potential buyers, and we did what any scrappy startup does, and made some alterations to our roadmap to win big deals, and made sure that those things were going to be universally useful for other customers as well. Um, and it was a competitive space, so we had Gong as the competitor. They're still private, whereas we opted to get acquired and bundle into Zoom Info. So competition, it was a good sign. It was kind of exciting. Like we knew where we stood on certain things, and from a product perspective, we were like, okay, there's a big contender. They're the Pepsi Coke challenge. Like, who do you choose, Team Red or Team Blue? And we're like, okay, well, you have to differentiate. So we kept on trying to just be really in tune with our customers and try to innovate. And so we did a couple of really interesting things that Gong didn't do, and that ended up being really useful for being acquired. So that was probably the most challenging, trying to innovate constantly, and also match like SMB needs to enterprise customers as we were developing the product.
Yeah, no, definitely. The culture of innovation that Chorus had back then, or during while I was there, was incredible, especially
Yeah, it was
in
really
terms of
fun.
how, yeah, it's crazy like how fast we were moving along, and then this crazy new idea came to be, and we had to make a component for it. And I remember especially with a lot of the dashboard work. The dashboard work was very
Hmm.
complex, and at the time there was nothing like it. It was,
Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah, that was so
yeah.
much fun working on that with you. I remember we did move pretty fast. I remember thinking, okay, let's do a couple things on contingency, like a contingency plan. And so this was like I feel like my big contribution to the team. Of course, I like visual design and whatever, but I really liked what I would call like rapid customer development. So we were always doing design sprints. We were always moving ahead. And I remember like some of our conversations and how you interacted with the broader design team as you were helping with the design system. And it was like, hey, we have these 5 interviews next week. If we could do this one thing to demonstrate it in Figma, like that would be a really cool. I'd call them Easter eggs. Just like you're here to test something else. This is like a little bit of a tangent, but it's like adjacent. So let's see how that conversation goes, see what those needs are, and then go like, hey, can I show you one more thing? And so I remember us collaborating on a few of those prototypes, throwing it in and being like, hey, if this were to exist, what do you think? Like, does this meet those needs? And like, so just always kind of trying to shoot a little bit ahead of the product development cycle instead of being like, this quarter we're doing something, but you're designing it and developing it at the same time. Like there's never a chance to learn. So always just trying to stay really far ahead. Like you and I did some interesting video player things and side panel things and extension things. It was like, let's try out some stuff. Not everything got made, but having the concept in a easy to understand way and test it with customers was super cool. So yeah, we were trying to be innovative and then also manage our cycles.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also another thing that's also interesting is that we also evolved in the same way that Figma was evolving at the time. Because
Yeah, I
back
think
then,
so. We were pushing the limits, it felt like. Yeah.
yeah, this was like pre-auto layout or just when auto layout was just created. And it's interesting how when Figma then began to do all the different component variants and it
Mhm.
became getting more advanced, how that then allowed us to then make even more detailed prototypes.
Yeah, I think we did a pretty good job in doing variants and like pushing it to the max. And it was great because we got to be really calibrated in like not all engineering teams are the same. Sometimes you hand off something to some and you're like, do your best guess or like try to approximate and then like let's go do QA on red line after. And other teams are like, I need everything to be buttoned up before the handoff. And so that was a fun collaboration with us as well. Like, okay, we've done this new internal video player, or we had like a lot of panels that would be like overflow menus and showing context and transcripts and like quotes and stuff. And we were very precise. Like it was like the handoff was like super clean. By the end of that handoff session, there was no question about exactly how it should go. So yeah, that was fun from a like practical position.
Awesome. And so let's go back to June of 2021. You hear the announcement of course getting acquired. How was it like reacting to that?
Yeah, it was really exciting. Definitely that was a moment that I wanted to be around for. Like I feel like I stuck around and with the issues with immigration, I was like, it doesn't matter. Whatever however this shakes out, I just want to be around for it. We had so much fun. Even on kind of on the low, like pitching different people to see about an M&A kind of exit, and even just like that thinking was really exciting. And then yeah, I thought ZoomInfo was the exact right partner, right acquirer, and we fit in just so naturally. A lot of that was thanks to the executive team, especially Dominic, who is the VP of product. Now he's a VP of uh, product management at ZoomInfo, and he really led the charge there. It was just really cool to see uh, all the culmination of our work be like met perfectly with, hey, here's we could fit in. I remember, yeah, several months of, okay, here's the full functionality stack. Here's what we can take from Chorus, put everywhere in ZoomInfo. Here's the other parts that ZoomInfo has. Okay, how do we put the data analytics here? How do we take org charts? How do we mix and match so that everywhere across the whole ZoomInfo platform, you're getting value, you're having those insights delivered right where you would expect them to be. So it was really cool. and it was quite a large design team at Zoom Info. I believe it was 60 people. Um, and I mean, I felt pretty privileged, pretty grateful. So I got to be the principal designer. So that meant I got to float a lot, which is kind of I was like, this feels like being a bit of a kid in a candy store. One minute you're going like, here's what a rebrand would look like and how the platform would have a launcher, and then you're like, what if we did this thing? And then so I was just jumping around a lot. It was pretty exciting. Um, but yeah, it was back to your original question. The June announcement was pretty cool and nice to see everyone's hard work really rewarded. People had been there really loyal. Like we had a pretty good core crew, especially who I interacted with in product engineering and design. People held on and they loved the mission, and we all loved working together. So it felt really celebratory.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's definitely something that was very unique about Chorus, that everyone was very united. And even though I didn't really talk to Dominic directly, I remember that he did when I left. He sent me a message on LinkedIn, and he was like, "No, thank you so much for your work and this and that." And
Yeah.
no, it was definitely one of the best experiences I've ever had
Oh,
working
good.
at the company.
I'm
Uh,
glad to hear that.
yes, but how do you, so let's fast forward 2023. There's ChatGPT, there's all these different things going on in AI. How do you think that designing for AI has changed since you exited Chorus?
Yeah, I think I mean, obviously so much more robust now. Um, it's a bit of a quantum leap, but like it's not all the way to like mind blowing yet, but it's even something that since Chat GPT came out, I'm wrapping my head around because there's now a title of prompt engineer. Like that never existed 6 months ago or even 4 months ago, I think. And so now even our engineering team at Grow, we're like, okay, how do we do some meaningful work? Like how do we not just package up a summary, an AI summary? Like how do we make sense? Like what are the prompts? How do we guide this intelligence towards the best outcome for our users? I can, I wish I could know everything that's going on at Zoom Info now that course is there. I can't, but I'm sure I can get some like maybe a couple whispers of something. But where my head goes is uh, especially with a trained model, the summaries and the insights are becoming so much more intelligent. Um, I'm wrapping my head around the like if you give the right prompts to GPT, you're like saying act as if this. And so if it has a pretty good approximation for uh, who it is as an actor, that can help. And part of the premise with Chorus was, we're going to onboard your reps faster because it's like they're being able to see everything that has been successful or a failure in the past because we had snippet libraries and different playlists and film review to help sales teams understand and learn. But if you imagine, okay, Chat GPT, act as if you are a RevOps or a sales manager. Now, how would you reference what just happened in this series of calls back to somebody? And then, okay, if the audience changes, if they're being onboarded, what are the key takeaways? What did they do right? What did they not do? That's just off the cuff. Like I'm sure they're doing that over there. But as like an example, you can kind of extrapolate that everywhere. Soon we're all gonna expect kind of more of like a version of hospitality almost. Like instead of it just being like, here's a dashboard, here's data. It's like, what do I as a user, my particular even a persona, want to experience? What do I need to know? What's a must to know? And what are my next steps? And I think there's probably a lot of opportunities in designing experiences that are much more like conversational, like a concierge helping you instead of go figure it out yourself through information architecture.
Yeah, that's really interesting because one thing that I've also seen in terms of applications of AI, I've seen this all over Twitter. People take a lot of ideas for creating startups and they just test them out on Twitter. And one idea that I found was basically using not ChatGPT, but essentially a summarizer to summarize a text, and then using one of those programs that take text and transform it into illustrations.
Hmm.
And the idea is to take essentially a book and transform it into a comic, or
Very
transform
cool.
it into another language, or into a braille, or into a whatever it may be. Mhm.
That's super cool. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like, this is like a dumber version, but like even something like Zapier,
Mhm.
um, very powerful. Very few people know how to wield that tool. But if you know how to do it right, you can almost make a whole no code like software or a SaaS product on your own as like a single person, just like, solving a problem. And the AI potential is the same, right? It just
Mhm.
depends on, did you ask the right questions? Did you have a procedure of how to use that input and modify it for your intended audience? And I think that's where it gets really exciting for designers right now. Because if you have empathy and you have some basic skills or knowledge of process, like, even just a designer moving into research more to understand directly from the customer's mouth what they expect and what they want. So it's not being diluted. So you can go, oh, I understand what's technically possible, what the customer wants. And then you can, yeah, you become an unstoppable force, I think, as a designer these days, if you just add on all these tools
Yeah.
and speak from that place of empathy.
Yeah, no, definitely. What would you say would be the three most important soft skills that a designer should have today?
Mm, definitely listening. um, in sales, this was the fun crossover between sales and design, working at Chorus and talking to so many people who are sales professionals. There's a phenomenon called happy ears, and it's basically like, you're just overly optimistic about the potential of a deal. So someone says, "Yeah, let's talk by the end of the year. Maybe we can open up budget." You go, nailed it. We're going to win this deal. What they're really saying is like, I'm giving you a soft no, and I'm hoping for it, and I don't want to ruin this relationship. And so you need someone to like help you. And in the same way, designers can be like, they fall in love with their own ideas. And so you have to listen truly to what people are really saying. If it's not a hell yeah, it's like, it's a no. And so to just be aware of that. So like both listening internally for stakeholder alignment, and then also for, if things truly resonate with customers, not using leading questions like, so do you like the way this looks? And like, what is somebody going to say? They're going to say yes, of course. Like, you're trying to build rapport with this other person on the call. So like listening truly and understanding and deciphering, I think maybe that's like a 1.5 things that designers need for soft skills. Probably the other is just being like really curious, especially as designers are doing more. Like I hear so many designers now doing more like product manager work, writing PRDs. And so getting better at articulating um, like your vision, what you think the costs are going to be, um, getting like, even just getting really critical about like uh, what the value is to the organization if you do a certain initiative, you launch a new feature. If you can crunch down those numbers, even if it's kind of back into the napkin math, like that goes a long way in getting your initiatives launched, um, doing work that you're passionate about. I hear a lot of designers say things like, I want a seat at the table. And it's like, well, if you want a seat at the table, you got to actually speak business. You have to actually be like, this is the business case for this new thing. And it's all about, mitigating risk. So um, what is that? Curiosity, listening, make things quantifiable, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, no, those are definitely very useful skills, and those are skills that I'm sure like a lot of designers are working on improving. I know myself, I like to think I'm improving on them little by little, but No, that's definitely something that you also gain with experience.
Yeah.
Especially, I'd say listening is the most important one because, at least in my experience, there's lots of times where you even have to filter in and listen to exactly, basically summarize a conversation,
Mhm.
and then sort of like repeat it in a summary in order to get the confirmation that you want. And
Yeah,
that's definitely something that is very useful as a designer. Mhm.
totally.
Yes. So let's jump now into what you're working on today. So tell me a little bit about Grow, and how did you come about this idea? Yeah, just tell me about it.
Yeah, so yeah, I met the other co-founders late 2019, and it was, initially just like I thought that they were doing something really cool and it had just launched, and I thought, I really want to be involved in this. I really want to help out. What caught me is, as I was finding the power of stakeholder alignment internally. So I, did I started facilitating a lot of innovation workshops, design sprints, etc. And once you realize the power of stakeholder alignment, you can't go back. And then once you understand the power of feedback from customers, you can't go back. But like you could have the exact right idea for a customer and even validate it. But if you can't shop that idea around to your internal team, it's never going to get built, right? So there's always this like idea of what's the right feedback from the right people and how do you make the qualitative quantitative. That's a tall order, of course. But the power of using chorus and dog fooding it, like I used it as a research repository, uh, made clips, took those clips, shared them with executives, and it was like, look, this is the feedback about our product. Do you see that like these top huge logo accounts are mad about functionality X being subpar? And just that clear-headed vision of a real customer is really going to churn. They dislike it, or in a workshop being like, this person does not agree with this, but we have a procedure to move people through decision making process. It opened my eyes to the power of like feedback in general. And so if you have a really cohesive team, you can build better things faster. You um, let's say you give honest feedback a few times. You're creating a culture of psychological safety, of trust, of camaraderie. Then what happens? Well, if somebody knows who you truly are and you know who they are and you can kind of make mistakes around each other, suddenly innovation's not so hard. Brainstorming sessions suck because people just go, well, I want to be the smartest person in the room, somebody the loudest person in the room, and they jot things on a board and then they argue, and then something mediocre gets shipped. But when you truly have alignment, when you have true insights into like how's my performance through that feedback, or like how did that thing turn out, now you can all get really on the same page. So that's kind of like the 30,000 foot view, but I understood the power of feedback and also felt like there was an additional business use case. So yeah, I've been at it with the team for about 2.5 years, and we've grown. We've done a couple new things. We've branched out from what I'd call like the atomic aspect of Grow, which is feedback. So we facilitate better kinds of feedback, nonviolent communication, things like different methodologies that help people interface better with each other. But then we've put on a couple additional layers. So we have integrated with many different tools. So let's say after this, in my version of Grow, it would say, how was like, even what did we name it? It's like Seb/Ryan recording. And it would be like, how did that go? And I'd be like, great. And then what do you want to give feedback to Seb on? And you'd be like, communication, he was prepared, very clear instructions. And then I'd give you a little note, and that would be documented somewhere. Then what we're doing now, and we've launched the V1 of, is tying that to business goals. So within a recession, we are seeing people are getting more serious about OKRs, different methods of accountability. okay, you did work on this thing. You went to this meeting with Sebastian. Was that actually in pursuit of a business goal? Like, which of your OKRs is that relating to? And like, yeah, it's number 3. And so there's a unique aspect of what we're doing, which is showing people the impact that they had on business goals, and then allowing leaders and managers to have some clarity around where are people best spent their time. Like, where do we allocate resources? Are people working on the right things? Does it feel good? Should we have done it differently? Did we spend too much time? Even just showing in man hours. So the central premise is people need to have really easy ways of sharing feedback to each other, and then it kind of scales out from there. Like, people need to just talk about a thing, maybe not about each other, and then they have shared goals. And so how does that help that cohesion? So you have the alignment, so you're all moving in the same direction as an organization. So yeah, that's what's getting me up out of bed these days.
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, because one thing that I also find interesting is that there's a lot of tools that are being made today for async work, but at the same
Mhm.
time, trends are kind of telling us to return to the office.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of discussion on remote work versus return to office. What do you think about all that?
Um, yeah, I think like legacy brands are definitely more return to the office. And other companies are trying to find a hybrid model that works for their particular culture. Um, Having been in a lot of different conversations with, varying scaled organizations, especially over the last 6 months, I'm hearing more, the team doesn't know it yet, but we're going to be an officially remote only org very soon. Um, so I don't think it's going away. I do understand the value of in person, but I've been thinking about this a lot, and I don't know if you need to be in the same room all the time, as long as you have good rapport and you're truly aligned with your closest working mates. Because, like, yeah, like, absolutely go into an office or a shared co-working space and do a workshop for 2 days. But outside of that, the rest is what? Emails and calls and writing code and writing docs. There's a lot of quiet work that doesn't need to be happening all in the same physical location. But yeah, I definitely see people are understanding the benefits of this, and we're just going to see a lot of new solutions to, like, people aren't comfortable with looms yet, or at least not everybody. But we're going to get to a place where something like that, where like Loom, the next version of Loom, really facilitates people feeling like I'm in sync, I'm happy. But I think that, like, the in-person stuff at the bare minimum should just be like after work drinks, or like an office party or an offsite to do planning for the next quarter. And then you get to know each other, and then the async stuff's way easier.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And the one thing that I also find interesting about Grow is how it also integrates with Slack, and how basically it revolves around that ecosystem that a lot of startups are used to, and it then creates like that sense of that sort of like feedback loop that is very important for employees and for just people in general to create good habits. How do you think has been the experience in terms of designing inside of the Slack ecosystem?
Yeah, it's been really good. So, it, to be honest, like, as a designer, who doesn't want to make a new web app and like control every aspect of an interface and put your stamp on it? But the fact is, like, consumers don't want another surface, and especially if you sell to enterprise. Managers are reluctant to almost buy another product because it's just one more tab that can distract people from work, right? So instead of replacing or augmenting with another tab, our premise was, let's just be in the middle of where everybody already works. So, like, our system is basically designed to be as lightweight and as invisible as possible. Most people don't give feedback about a meeting that just happened unless it's within like a 30-second window. It has to be truly post-event. I have a minute. Yeah, loved it. Great presentation. Next steps, agenda was followed, etc. But other than that, they're like, why would I ever give feedback about a meeting? And then you get prompted with like, hey, do you know John in your office? What do you think about him? And you're like, he's nice. I don't I don't know. And so there's this like order of operations. Do you make another surface? And the answer is no. Like if people are already in Slack or MS Teams, and we can pull in all the work they do in Google Workspace, Jira, Confluence, Notion, everything, Asana, then it's like, well, an event happened. How do you feel about it? You skipped or you just ignore it? Who cares? We just needed like a small subset of people to actually, answer that poll, give some honest feedback, and now you suddenly have a little bit more insight into how your whole organization is going. So yeah, the Slack interface is really interesting. We have stretched the capabilities of Slack's UI considerably. They're like, you guys are doing some weird stuff on your in that wrapper, and we're like, yeah, we have like image and text generators and a feed, and it's all very non-standard for Slack. But we're passionate about just like meeting people where they're at and giving them a good experience. And then if the next, like, so we have a Chrome extension. If the next thing is email, and we're just like, hey, we're hitting the high points. We're sometimes in the browser, sometimes in Slack, sometimes in your email. Why do you need a whole web app just to go check like a chart on a dashboard? That's not going to help people get their work done. So yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one thing that's also interesting to note is how I find it really interesting how this whole product is designed using a behavioral psychology
Mhm.
methodology. And That's really interesting because essentially one of the key things that comes from behavioral psychology is that because people can't really read others' minds, they can only understand patterns of thought, and those patterns come from behavior. And based on behavior, you're then able to then predict what someone is thinking more accurately. And and I believe that from using a product like this, you definitely address a lot of a lot of those smaller improvements in the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And yeah, we try our best with the behavioral psychology aspects. Like there's certain things that we just won't do from kind of a philosophical lens. Like we're not going to be surveillance software ever. Like we don't need to tell people like, hey, this person is slacking. You probably know, but we have a definite bent from a product psychology perspective of like, we're celebrating the good. We're celebrating people's strengths. You might have problems with this person, but they're actually excelling in X, Y, and Z. So focus on that. Or like, here's their gains, or here's the positive public feedback that people have been posting about that person. So yeah, there's a lot of different behavioral psychology like tricks that we're doing, and there's some ones that we're avoiding those dark patterns.
What would you say would be like a dark pattern in behavioral psychology?
Ooh, well, anything to do with shame, fear, guilt. Even just like being too precise in quantifying people's output could really backfire on pretty much anybody. Um, Not allowing anonymous constructive feedback is something that we've noticed that we have to like definitely curtail, protect people against. Because what happens is instead of being honest, it's the same argument probably as like in social media, not allowing anonymous accounts. You're like, if the person has their real identity, they're going to be much more careful. And that's what we see in one-on-one feedback. Anytime we got a request for, hey, could you implement an anonymous feedback portion? We're like, we can, but it has to be in a certain band or for certain use cases. Because what ends up happening is there's some person in the office, like he's Dennis, and he's been problematic recently. And so instead of anyone being upfront, they go, can I have an anonymous thing so I can just pile on and tell him I hate him? And we're like, no, that's not going to end well. Like if you need to remove somebody or lay them off or do some remediation, do that, but not anonymous hazing. So there's interesting things that are just human nature, and you're like, okay, let's just like move you away from that and more into supportive. Like there's a just the framework for feedback. Start, stop, continue, and we're like actually starting and stopping. Um, like feedback is okay. Continue is the best because you crowd out the bad with the good. You go, you did these three things that are amazing. Keep going. In fact, like pour more gas on that fire, and people get charged up. So we're trying to like encourage that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, because anonymity, especially in UX design, it's there's a lot of dark patterns that grow from it, and it's very hard to predict. Like for example, if you have you used Blind?
No.
Okay, so Blind App is basically an anonymous Reddit for people who work in tech companies and financial companies and a lot of like the bigger companies. And
Hmm.
what's interesting is that because it's anonymous, everyone basically asks all the questions that you wouldn't ask in the workplace. And there's an entire lingo that was created from that. So, for example, if you do a post, at the end of your post, you need to basically tell how much you're making in total compensation. And if you don't say it, you get hazed essentially. And it's really interesting how just by adding the anonymous aspect to it, and then by making all of the users a certain profile, you create a behavior that's completely different. And I
Yeah.
always found that to be very interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and in that case, anonymity is a tool to be used for good, right? Like it's interesting because no one function is inherently good or bad, but when you realize you're trying to like guide people down an experiential path to some outcome, you have to kind of like put up the guardrails. So that's fascinating because yeah, in that situation, you need it to be anonymous. You don't work with them. You need to like not have your name attached to your net worth on some random forum. um but yeah, yeah, fascinating. I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun to scroll around.
Cool.
But yeah, so kind of like moving, looking forward to this year. What would you say would be are some of the biggest trends in design for 2023?
um this one I think is perennial, but like design that's much more opinionated or unique to suit the brand. That's something I've always advocated for, and I feel like we're kind of at this point where people are done with it's just flat. People are getting into different design patterns and looks and feels, and I think anytime a company can actually make their product look like their brand, they're going to win because it's just more memorable. You put more thought into it. Nothing has to be super standard. Like there is a bit of like give me something universal so I don't have to think. But if you're thoughtful about it and it matches the brand, people like welcome a unique experience. So I think that's going to be a big one, especially as people look to, um, you know, maybe put a little bit of a flourish on it this year, or like try to demonstrate that their product is really valuable, and people are, reducing expenditures and canceling apps if you're the one that feels special, or you feel like, um, actually, yeah, this is one thing I've been noticing. There's like a key persona that really typifies really successful enterprise products now. There's almost like HubSpot championed the customer success manager, and that was not really a known term before HubSpot capitalized on that. But then maybe that's the other thing. Like, so yes, make it the brand come through in the product, but also like hone in on your key persona, the person who is gonna lay down in front of the train tracks to stop anyone from churning out of this product because it's mission critical for them. So I think if there's some extra thought put into making your product feel really special and being like a companion for your person, so that they depend on you to get their work done, that's going to be really really valuable. So I think that's something that designers should think about a little bit more too.
Interesting. Yeah, because that aspect of personalization is definitely becoming more important, especially as with all the different changes that are having happening in terms of the economy and with the tech industry today, especially a lot of startups are going to have to rely on their 100 biggest fans
Hmm.
in kind of like in that sense in order to in order to survive.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting, seeing how a lot of companies focus more on personalization and focus more on creating a truly unique experience.
Yeah.
And just to wrap up, the last question I have is, what would be like your advice for someone who is a junior? So let's say someone just graduated university, they're starting their career, they might have a job, they might be contracting, they might not have anything. What would you say would be a good piece of advice to give them?
Probably to get as much real world experience as possible. Like, don't waste your time doing beautiful fake dashboards. Like, if you have a friend who has a business, make them an e-commerce website. Like, it's not UX, like, I mean, it is, but it's not a product, but like, just do it. Like, take on every opportunity to do something real with real world constraints, and see how it fits in the world. And just say yes to all these opportunities. Like, at a certain point, you'll know when to say no. But when you're getting started, especially, you can't wait for the perfect opportunity to come across your desk. You got to go, sure, what's the most I think I can charge per hour? I'll try that. They said no, a little less. Okay, now I have 40 hours with them. Or it's pro bono because it's for a friend. So getting those hours in, really collaborating, testing your design muscles, look like, so investigating what needs to be done from stakeholders, and what's possible from a technical perspective, and actually seeing it come to fruition is going to be 100 times more valuable than making a post that somebody likes a bunch of times on Dribble. Um, yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's definitely something that does happen a lot. That a lot of people focus on doing things that aren't implementable,
yeah,
but then when that's before they learn what a design system is, and that sometimes you can't always do what all those crazy designs.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, just being practical. And I mean, like, just part of that is experimentation too. Um, I think design is going to go through rapid transformation with all the new designs. Like, it's crazy what you can generate from Dolly 2. You can say, design me an e-commerce website with these colors, and the brand should say this, and you can get really specific. And so, if that's what we're competing against, like, just pure execution with no thought isn't acceptable anymore. So we have to be business partners, we have to be research scientists, we have to be really thoughtful and consider like what we're putting out into the world. And so some of that's just experimenting, like getting really interested in analytics, or maybe you want to build a part of it, like build a little bit of the front end. Anything you can do to augment your skills as a designer at this juncture, I think, is really important.
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, it's been a pleasure having you here, Ryan, and yeah, no, definitely nice catching up after quite a while.
Yeah, really, really nice to catch up. Nice to see you. I'm happy you're doing a podcast. This is great.
Thank you so much.